My parents forced me to cancel my application to college because they had plans for my perfect child sister. Years later, when I became a CEO, they came to ask for my sister. Growing up, it was no secret who was the favorite in our house. My sister, Ashley, could do no wrong. She was the golden child. Straight A's, homecoming queen, and my parents' pride and joy. If I brought home a B+, I'd get a lecture on potential. If Ashley skipped curfew or forgot her chores, they'd shrug it off. She's under a lot of pressure. I didn't envy them then. I was focused on my own thing, working part-time, saving money, and planning my future. I wanted to go to college and study business. I'd always been fascinated by how successful people built empires from nothing, and I dreamed of doing the same. It wasn't just talk either. I had already been accepted to my dream school. Everything was on track until that one night. The night my life was turned upside down. My parents called a family meeting. It was weird, family meetings weren't really a thing in our house. I thought maybe it was about Ashley's recent move back home. She and her husband were taking a break, and it was clear that things were falling apart for her. She'd been back with us for a few weeks, along with her 2 kids. I thought maybe they would ask me to help out a little more around the house. What I didn't expect was that they would ask me to throw my whole future away. "Oliver, we need to talk about college," my father said. "Okay," I replied, waiting for them to finish. Mom jumped in. "We've been thinking. With everything going on, this may not be the right time for you to go. Ashley needs our support right now." My stomach dropped. "Wait. What are you talking about? I've already been accepted. I've been working for this for years." Dad crossed his arms and nodded, as if bracing for my reaction. "We know, but things have changed. Ashley's struggling, and she needs us. We can't do this alone, Oliver." I stared at her in disbelief. "You're seriously telling me not to go to college? Just because Ashley can't handle her life right now? She's going through a lot," Mom said. "You'll have other opportunities, but family comes first. You'll understand when you're older." It felt like a slap in the face. Family comes first? Since when? Ashley was the one who'd been partying like she was still in high school while her husband left her. But no, it was my future that had to be sacrificed to keep the family together. I fought her on this. I pleaded, I yelled. I even tried talking to Ashley directly, but she just shrugged it off. "It's not like I asked them to do this," she said. "They made the decision, not me." That didn't stop her from taking full advantage. The next few months were a nightmare. I was stuck at home babysitting her 2 kids, Caleb and Mia, while Ashley partied every other night. Diapers, homework, tantrums, this became my life. I didn't even recognize myself. Meanwhile, my parents praised Ashley for being so strong through the breakup. They told me I was being selfish when I was frustrated. "Ashley's under a lot of stress," they'd say, as if I wasn't drowning under the weight of their expectations. I was supposed to be the responsible one, the fixer. The one who could put his life on hold for the greater good. But I couldn't take it anymore. Every day felt like I was falling further into a pit from which I'd never escape. My depression hit hard. Some nights I would just lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, thinking about how I'd lost everything I'd worked for. One night, after Ashley came home drunk and barely acknowledged me, I snapped. I told my parents that I was done. "I can't do this anymore. You want me to give it all up? Fine. But I'm not staying here." Ashley rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Go ahead and leave. But don't come crawling back when you fail out there." My parents didn't try to stop me. In fact, I think they thought I was bluffing. But I wasn't. I packed a bag that night and I left. No money, no plan, no college prospects. Just the bitter reality that the people who were supposed to support me had abandoned me the moment Ashley needed them. For a long time after that, I didn't think I'd ever recover. But that was just the beginning of my story. When I left home, I had no idea where I was going. I didn't even have enough money for a motel. I spent the first few nights sleeping on a bench near a park where I used to play as a kid. It was one of those moments when you realize how quickly life can turn upside down. One day you're fighting with your parents, the next you're wondering where your next meal is coming from. I swallowed my pride and reached out to some friends. Most of them gave me vague excuses they didn't want to get involved in my family drama. Except for Ryan. He was an old friend from high school, and when I told him what had happened, he didn't even hesitate. "Man, this is messed up," he said. "You can stay at my place for now, but it's a one-bedroom, so you'll have to take the couch." It wasn't much, but it was better than the park. I stayed with Ryan for a couple of months. I worked whatever jobs I could find: construction, stocking shelves at a grocery store, even cleaning offices at night. I barely slept, but I was determined not to crawl back to my parents like Ashley had predicted. Still, I wasn't feeling well. The weight of it all was crushing me. I'd hear other people my age talking about college or internships or career plans, and it was like a knife twisting in my gut. This was supposed to be me. One night, after a brutal 12-hour shift, I collapsed. I sat alone in the dark, staring at my phone. I almost called my parents. I thought maybe, just maybe, they would apologize or offer some kind of support. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Deep down, I knew they wouldn't. Days turned into weeks, and I began to feel like I was running out of options. That's when I met Terrence. He was one of the managers at a warehouse I was working at, and he noticed how hard I was working. "Have you ever thought about going back to school?" he asked me one day. I laughed bitterly. "I can barely pay my rent now. College isn't in the cards for me." Terrence shook his head. "Don't sell yourself short, man. There's always a way. Look for scholarships, grants, anything you can get your hands on. You've got potential, I can see it." I don't know why, but those words stuck with me. No one had told me I had potential in a long time. Maybe never. So I started looking. I found a community college with a program that allowed students to work and study part-time. It wasn't my dream school, but it was a start. I enrolled with what little savings I had left and continued to work the warehouse job to pay the bills. Those were some of the hardest years of my life. I barely had time to breathe, let alone socialize, but I was finally moving forward. I promised myself I wouldn't stop until I'd built the life I'd always dreamed of. It wasn't glamorous. I had setbacks, moments when I thought about quitting. But I kept going. And eventually, I earned my associate's degree. That was the turning point. With that degree, I landed a better job, still not glamorous, but enough to finally get out of survival mode. Over the next few years, I clawed my way up. I transferred to a university, got my undergraduate degree in business, and eventually found myself in the corporate world. I started as a low-level analyst, but worked my way up through sheer determination. Promotions came slowly at first, but they came. By the time I was 26, I had a solid career. By 28, I was a regional manager for a large technology company. And at 30, I did something I never thought possible. I was named CEO of a growing startup. We were bringing in millions every month. My life had completely changed. And my family? They had no idea. I didn't call them. They didn't either. In their eyes, I was probably still struggling somewhere, bitter and directionless. I kept up with them through mutual friends. Ashley was divorced and still living with my parents. Her ex-husband wasn't paying child support, and she'd been bouncing between dead-end jobs. Part of me felt vindicated. They had bet everything on Ashley, and it had blown up in their faces. But another part of me wondered if they thought about me at all. Did they regret what they'd done? Or did they still think I was the failure they'd written off? The question stayed with me. Until one day I got my answer. It began with a phone call. I was in my office when it happened. I'd just finished a meeting with our board of directors when my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, I ignored it. Calls during work hours were usually spam or business partners. But then I saw the name flash on the screen, Mom. I froze. I hadn't heard from her in more than 8 years. Why now? I let the call go to voicemail. But then another call came. Dad. Then another. Ashley. They were calling me back to back, something they'd never done before, not even when I lived with them. Curiosity got the best of me, so I finally answered. Oliver, oh my God! It's really you! My mom's voice came through, a mix of surprise and excitement. We saw you on TV. You're a CEO now? How come you didn't tell us? So that was it. I'd recently been featured in a segment about up-and-coming business leaders. They must have seen it and suddenly remembered I existed. I didn't say much, just let her ramble. She went on and on about how proud she was, how they'd been telling everyone, how successful their son had become. I had to stop myself from laughing at the irony. They hadn't wanted me to go to college in the first place. Then she hit me with the inevitable invitation. Your dad and I would love to have you over. Maybe for dinner? You can bring your wife. We want to catch up, hear all about your life. I hesitated. A big part of me wanted to say no. After all they had put me through, they didn't deserve to see this version of me, the one who had fought tooth and nail to succeed. They deserved to see the broken child they left behind. But that's when my wife, Emily, stepped in. She'd overheard part of the call and looked at me. Later, she pulled me aside. You should go, she said gently. Family is important, even if they hurt you. Maybe they've changed. Or maybe they just want something. I muttered. Maybe. She agreed. But you'll never know if you don't give them a chance. She was right, as usual. So, reluctantly, I agreed to visit. The following weekend, Emily and I drove to my parents' house. It felt surreal pulling into the driveway. The place hadn't changed much, same worn shutters, same faded paint. Memories flooded back, some good, most not. I could feel the tension building in my chest as I got out of the car. Mom greeted me at the door like a long-lost hero. She hugged me so tightly it was almost uncomfortable. Dad was more reserved, but still smiled and shook my hand. Ashley was there too, standing awkwardly in the living room. She looked tired. Older. Life hadn't been kind to her. For a moment, I thought maybe things really had changed. Maybe they really wanted to reconnect and make amends. But then, over dinner, the truth came out. Oliver, we need to talk about something, Mom said, putting down her fork. Here we go. I braced myself. It's Ashley, she continued. She's having trouble keeping up with the bills. The kids are growing up so fast, and we thought maybe you could help out a little. You're doing so well now, and you've always been good with money. There it was. The real reason they wanted me back in their lives. They needed me to bail Ashley out. The room fell silent after my mother's request. I looked around the table. My dad was nervously fidgeting with his napkin, avoiding eye contact. Ashley sat stiffly, her arms crossed, as if she already expected me to say no. I could feel Emily's eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd react. I leaned back in my chair. So let me get this straight. You want me to help Ashley financially? Mom nodded quickly. Not that we expect you to do everything, Oliver. But you're in a position to help. She's family. There it was again. Family. That word had haunted me ever since they used it to justify tearing my life apart all those years ago. The same word they threw at me when they forced me to stay behind and sacrifice my future for Ashley's. Now they wanted me to play savior again. Before I could say anything, Ashley finally spoke. You don't have to make a big deal out of this, she said, her tone defensive. It's not like I'm asking for a handout. I just need help for the kids. Things have been tough since the divorce. Rough? I raised an eyebrow. Ashley, I know about the clubs, the debt, all of it. You've been living irresponsibly for years. Her face turned red. Wow. So now you're here to judge me? I didn't ask you to come back into our lives. Enough, Mom said, trying to defuse the tension. This isn't about the past. We're just asking you to help your sister get back on her feet. I was about to refuse outright when Emily placed her hand on mine. She gave me a subtle nod, her way of saying listen to her. I sighed and softened my tone. Look, I'm not saying I won't help, but I need to understand exactly what's going on. How bad is it? Ashley hesitated before admitting. I'm behind on the mortgage. Like way behind. I may lose the house. Why haven't you just moved back here? Emily asked gently. I can't. There's no room for me and the kids. And honestly, I needed to get out of that house. It was stifling, she muttered, looking at our parents. That struck a chord with me. For years I'd thought Ashley was their perfect little angel, but it seemed things weren't as perfect as I'd imagined. Maybe she was stuck in a prison of her own. Then something unexpected happened. My father, who had been silent all evening, finally spoke. We didn't just call you here for Ashley, he said, his voice lower than usual. There's something else. I frowned. What do you mean? He exchanged a look with Mom, who seemed suddenly uncomfortable. Your mother and we have some financial problems of our own, he admitted. Our retirement savings are gone. We had to take out a second mortgage on the house to help Ashley after the divorce. Now we're barely keeping our heads above water. It was like a punch in the gut. They'd been in deep trouble for years and hadn't even reached out to me. I could understand that pride was keeping them quiet, but it was also clear that they had pinned all their hopes on Ashley, as they always had. And now they were going to drown together. Why didn't you tell me before? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. We didn't think you wanted to hear from us, Mom said quietly. Not after the way things ended. We were wrong. We know that now. The room fell into a heavy silence. Emily squeezed my hand again, grounding me. I looked at her, and she gave me that look, the one that said it's your choice, but I believe in you. I thought of everything I had been through. The years of struggle, the bitterness, the endless cycle of work and survival. I had every reason to leave them now. I didn't owe them anything. But I wasn't that broken teenager anymore. I had power now. The power to choose who I wanted to be. Finally, I spoke. Okay. I'll help. But there will be conditions. Ashley raised an eyebrow. Conditions? Yes. No more reckless spending. No more clubbing. You'll take financial literacy classes, and you'll find a steady job. I'll pay your mortgage for a few months, but after that, you're on your own. She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped when she saw the look on my face. Fine, she muttered. And as for you too, I said, turning to my parents, we'll set up a proper budget. I'll help with the house payments for now, but you're going to work with a financial advisor to get things back on track. They both nodded, relief washing over their faces. I could tell they hadn't expected me to agree. After dinner, Emily and I left the house. On the drive home, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: anger, pity, hope. I wasn't sure if helping them was the right thing to do, but deep down I knew I had made the decision for myself, not for them. Proud of you, Emily said quietly. Yeah, I muttered. We'll see how long it lasts. But little did I know that wasn't the end. Something else was about to happen, something that would test just how far I was willing to go for my family. Over the next few months, things slowly began to change. I followed through on my promises, paying off Ashley's mortgage, getting my parents' finances under control, and connecting them all with a financial advisor. Ashley even found a job managing logistics for a local company. She wasn't thrilled about it, but to her credit, she stuck with it. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments. Ashley struggled with the sudden loss of freedom. My parents, especially Dad, had trouble letting go of their pride. But for the first time in years, we talked. Not just superficial things, but real conversations. Sometimes I'd sit across from my mother in their small, outdated kitchen and listen to her talk about things I'd never heard before. How hard it had been to raise 2 children while constantly worrying about money. How she had convinced herself that Ashley's success would lift the whole family, while I was considered reliable enough to make it on my own. She apologized more than once, though the pain in her eyes told me she knew it might not be enough. And Ashley was a puzzle. She opened up slowly, like pulling teeth. One night, when we were alone, she finally admitted something that took me by surprise. "I was jealous of you," she said, looking down at her glass of wine. I blinked. "Jealous? Of me? You were the golden child. You had everything." She laughed bitterly. "That's what it looked like, huh? Everyone expected me to be perfect all the time. Mom and Dad didn't care if I was happy, just that I made them look good. They wouldn't even let me go to the college I wanted to go to. They chose one that fit their image. I was drowning, Oliver. I didn't know who I was, so I just destroyed myself. For the first time, I saw her as more than the spoiled, irresponsible sister I'd resented for so long. We had both been trapped by our parents' expectations in different ways. The difference was that I had fought my way out. She had been crushed under the weight. This conversation softened something in me. Maybe we couldn't erase the past, but we could rebuild from here. A few weeks later, I invited everyone to a company event. It was a charity gala, and I thought it might help bridge the gap between our lives. I figured they'd show up, smile awkwardly, and leave early. Instead, the most unexpected thing happened. My father, who had always been stoic and distant, pulled me aside during the event. He looked around at the huge hall filled with business leaders and celebrities. For once, he didn't look overwhelmed, he looked proud. "You've built something incredible here, son," he said softly. "I never told you this, but when I was your age, I dreamed of starting my own business. I was too afraid to take the risk. To see you succeed like this." He paused, his eyes shining with an emotion I'd never seen before. "You did what I couldn't. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you. More than you'll ever understand." It hit me harder than I thought it would. I had spent so many years chasing success, hoping to prove something to myself, to them, to the world. I didn't realize how much I still craved that validation. In that moment, something inside me finally let go. The night ended on a high note. My parents mingled with people they never thought they'd meet, and Ashley even seemed to enjoy herself. It felt like a turning point, like maybe we could move forward. But life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. A few days later, I received an urgent phone call from my mother. Dad had been rushed to the hospital after collapsing at home. A heart attack. It wasn't fatal, but it was serious enough to shake us all up. I spent the next week at his bedside, sitting through tense conversations with doctors and comforting my mom, who broke down in tears more than once. That week changed everything. My dad became more thoughtful, softer. He admitted that he had spent too many years focusing on the wrong things: status, control, appearances. "I've wasted so much time, Oliver," he said quietly one night. "Don't make the same mistake." After he recovered, the family dynamic shifted in ways I hadn't expected. We began to make time for each other. I visited my parents regularly with Emily, and Ashley and I actually became close. We even took her kids on some weekend trips. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. And yet I couldn't quite understand why I'd worked so hard to save our relationship. Maybe some part of me still wanted to believe that family, flawed as it was, could be redeemed. Maybe I wanted my children when Emily and I decided to have them to grow up with grandparents and an aunt who loved them. Or maybe I just needed to prove to myself that I could rise above the pain and bitterness. Whatever the reason, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't that broken teenager anymore. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes of that betrayal. And now I was finally at peace. As we gathered for a family barbecue one warm Sunday afternoon, I stood off to the side, watching my parents laugh with Ashley's kids. Emily nudged me gently. "You okay?" I smiled. "Yeah. I think I am." Life had come full circle, but this time I was in control.